Kim Tae-ho slammed his fist against the cracked dashboard as another red warning light blinked to life. The fuel gauge showed dangerously low levels. And his atmospheric transport wheezed like an old man climbing stairs, 3 months without. A decent cargo run meant 3 months without proper maintenance, and the rust bucket was falling apart piece by piece. The rain pounded his windshield so hard he could barely see the road ahead. Kepler Station's industrial district sprawled round him like a graveyard of broken dreams. Empty warehouses lined the streets, their darkened windows staring down at him like dead eyes. Kim knew each building's story. The Chen family's electronics factory that went bankrupt last year, the abandoned mining equipment depot where Lei family used to work, the shuttered spacecraft repair shop where his friend Yoon once fixed atmospheric transports just like this one. All human businesses, all failed in the past years. Kim wondered if his cargo company would join them soon. His stomach growled, reminding him that dinner tonight would be another packet of cheap synthetic noodles. The bank had frozen his accounts yesterday, and the spaceport authority was threatening to revoke his pilot license if he didn't pay the docking fees. Kim gripped the steering wheel tighter. His knuckles white against the worn plastic dot. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the empty road for a brief moment. That's when he saw her. A figure stumbled out from behind an overturned cargo container, waving both arms frantically. Kim's first instinct was to keep driving. The industrial district after midnight was no place for honest people, and he had enough problems without picking up strangers. But as his headlights swept across the woman, he saw her clearly. She wore a jacket that probably cost more than Kim made in 6 months, but it was torn and dirty. Her pants were designer quality, the kind with built-in climate control that only the wealthy could afford. But what caught his attention were the neural implants along her temple, top-tier models that glowed with a soft blue light. Only the super-rich had access to that kind of technology. Kim slowed the transport, his conscience winning over his caution. He couldn't leave anyone stranded in this storm, regardless of his own troubles. The woman ran toward his vehicle, stumbling slightly as her expensive shoes slipped on the wet pavement. She yanked open the passenger door and practically threw herself inside, gasping for breath. Water dripped from her black hair onto the torn upholstery. Up close, Kim could see that her expensive clothes were not just dirty but shredded in places, as if she had crawled through broken glass. "Please," she said between ragged breaths, "I need to reach the spaceport immediately." Her voice carried the refined accent of someone educated in the core worlds. But underneath it Kim heard pure terror. Her hands shook as she tried to close the door, and she kept glancing back through the rear window as if expecting something terrible to emerge from the darkness. "My name is Park So-young," she continued, finally meeting his eyes. "I can pay you whatever you want." Kim studied her face in the dim light of his transport's cabin. Fear radiated from every line of her expression. But there was something else, a desperate determination that reminded him of himself during his worst business failures. He had seen that look in the mirror often enough. "Kim Tae-ho," he replied, putting the transport back in gear. "And right now I just want to get out of this rain." As they pulled away from the abandoned cargo containers, So-young kept watching the rear scanner display. Kim noticed her neural implants were flickering more rapidly now, processing data at superhuman speeds. Whatever information she was accessing, it wasn't making her feel any safer. "Where exactly at the spaceport?" Kim asked, navigating round a massive pothole that could have swallowed his entire transport. "The private docking bays. Bay 7 Alpha." She paused, then added quietly, "There's a ship waiting for me there. At least, I hope there still is." Kim nodded, though something about her tone made him uneasy. Private docking bays were expensive, reserved for corporate executives and government officials. What was a woman like that doing stranded in the worst part of Kepler Station's industrial district? Thunder crashed overhead, and Kim's transport shuddered against a sudden gust of wind. The storm was getting worse, and the 20-minute drive to the spaceport would be challenging even under normal circumstances. But as he glanced at his passenger, who was still scanning the darkness behind them with obvious fear, Kim suspected this would be anything but a normal night. He had no idea that picking up Park So-young would drag him into a conspiracy that reached across the entire galaxy, or that his failing cargo business was about to become humanity's last hope against an alien empire that had been quietly strangling human civilization for decades. "They're coming for me," So-young whispered, her eyes fixed on the rear scanner display. The green dots on the screen were moving fast. Too fast for any human aircraft. Vraxian hunters. "They killed my family 3 days ago." Kim Tae-ho felt his blood turn to ice water. Everyone in human space knew about the Vraxians. Tall, reptilian creatures with silver scales and cold yellow eyes. They called themselves business consultants, but everyone knew what they really were. Corporate assassins who cleaned up problems for the highest bidder. And they considered humans nothing more than annoying insects. "How many?" Kim asked, pressing harder on the accelerator. His old transport groaned in protest, but the engine responded. "At least 3 ships," So-young replied. Her neural implants flickering rapidly as she processed the scanner data. "MK7 interceptors. They can hit Mach for an atmosphere." Kim's transport could barely manage half that speed on a good day. Today was definitely not a good day. The rain was making visibility nearly zero, and his engines were already running hot. From the earlier drive through flooded streets, the scanner suddenly erupted with new context. Sleek, angular shapes dropped from the storm clouds like deadly birds of prey. The Vraxian ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, all smooth curves and glowing energy cores. Built for speed and killing, their hulls gleamed with an oily rainbow, sheen that seemed to bend light round them. "There," So-young pointed at the lead ship. "That's the one that destroyed my family's transport. I watched it happen." The Vraxian interceptors split formation, trying to surround Kim's lumbering transport. Energy beams lanced down from their weapon pods, turning the wet pavement into clouds of superheated steam. Kim yanked the steering wheel hard right, barely avoiding a blast that would have vaporized them both. "Hold on," he shouted, spinning the wheel left and diving toward what looked like solid concrete at the last second. A hidden maintenance hatch slid open, revealing a tunnel entrance that most people never noticed. So-young screamed as they plunged into darkness, but Kim knew exactly where he was going. 2 years ago, his mining operation had used these service tunnels to transport equipment without paying the expensive surface road fees back then. He thought learning every twist and turn was just good business sense. Now it might save their lives. The tunnel was barely wide enough for his transport, and the ceiling scraped against their roof with a horrible grinding sound. Behind them, the Vraxian ships hesitated at the tunnel entrance. Their sleek interceptors were built for open space combat, not crawling through human maintenance shafts. "They can't follow us in here," Kim said, navigating a sharp turn by memory. "Their ships are too big." But the Vraxians weren't giving up. Kim heard the whine of energy weapons charging, and suddenly the tunnel walls exploded round them. The aliens were trying to collapse the entire passage, hoping to crush them under tons of concrete and steel. "Left here," Kim shouted over the noise, taking a branch tunnel that led deeper into Kepler Station's underground network. Chunks of ceiling rained down on their roof, denting the metal but not breaking through. So-young gripped her seat as they bounced through another tight turn. How do you know where you're going? These tunnels aren't on any public maps. I used to run illegal mining equipment through here, Kim replied. Dodging a massive support beam that had partially collapsed, the surface roads charged too much. So we found our own way, spent months mapping every passage. Above them, the Vraxian ships screamed through the storm, trying to track their movement. But the humans had vanished into a maze that existed nowhere in their tactical computers. The aliens had superior technology, faster ships and deadlier weapons. What they didn't have was 2 years of experience smuggling heavy machinery through abandoned service tunnels. Kim took another sharp turn, then another. The tunnel network stretched for kilometers under the industrial district, connecting every major building and facility. It was a forgotten relic from the station's construction, built by human engineers who believed in having backup routes for everything. There's an exit near the old fabrication plant, Kim said, checking his mental map. We can surface there and take the maintenance roads to the spaceport. They'll never expect us to come up in that sector. So Young was staring at him with something like amazement. You're outrunning 3 Vraxian interceptors in a cargo transport that's older than I am. Sometimes being human is enough, Kim replied, steering round a flooded section where a water main had burst years ago. We don't have their fancy technology, but we know how to adapt. How to use what we have instead of crying about what we don't have. The exit tunnel appeared ahead, leading back to the surface. Kim could see rain falling through the opening, but no sign of alien ships. The Vraxians were probably still circling the entrance, where they had disappeared. Wondering how two humans had simply vanished into solid rock dot as they emerged into the storm again. So Young turned to look back at the tunnel entrance. They'll figure out where we went eventually. Maybe, Kim said, heading toward the darkened spaceport in the distance. But by then, we'll be long gone. Kim pulled his battered transport into the shadows of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the industrial district. The building had once housed Park Industries' main assembly line, but like so many human businesses, it had mysteriously failed 2 years ago. Now broken windows stared down at them like empty eye sockets, and rusted machinery sat covered in dust and bird droppings. We should be safe here for a while, Kim said, turning off the engine. The sudden silence felt strange after hours of running from alien hunters. The Vraxians won't think to look in a place this worthless. So Young was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Her expensive neural implants had stopped flickering, but Kim could see data streams still scrolling across her retinas. Whatever she was looking at, it wasn't making her happy. There's something I need to tell you, she said finally. Something that's going to sound crazy. Kim leaned back in his seat. After being chased through underground tunnels by alien assassins, he figured his definition of crazy had expanded quite a bit. Try me. So Young took a deep breath. My name isn't just Park So-young. I'm Park So-young of Stellar Terraforming Industries. My family owns the largest human terraforming company in the galaxy. Kim blinked. Everyone knew STI. They had turned dozens of dead rocks into green. Living worlds where humans could build new homes. The Park family was one of the wealthiest in human space, with enough money to buy entire star systems. You're telling me I just rescued a billionaire's? Kim asked. Was a billionaire's? So Young corrected bitterly. 3 days ago, my parents and 2 brothers were traveling to a business meeting on Proxima Station. Their transport exploded during takeoff. Official investigation called it engine failure. But I know better. She activated a holographic display from her neural implants, filling the air between them with floating documents and video files. Kim had never seen encryption this advanced, military-grade security that would take normal computers. Tories to crack. The Vraxians killed them. So Young continued, and they did it because my family discovered something that could destroy their entire operation in human space. The hologram shifted, showing financial records, shipping manifests, and communication intercepts, even to Kim's untrained eye. The patterns were obvious once you knew what to look for. Human businesses would be thriving one day, then suddenly face supply shortages, shipping delays, and equipment failures the next, for the past 30 years. The Vraxians have been systematically destroying human economic independence, So Young explained. They don't invade with armies or weapons. They just make it impossible for us to succeed on our own. Kim stared at a shipping record from his own company 3 months ago. He had been expecting a crucial delivery of mining equipment from the Centauri system. The shipment had been delayed, rerouted, and finally lost entirely. The insurance company had blamed pirates. But now he could see Vraxian shell companies all through the transaction chain. Your cargo business, So Young said, watching his face. When did it start going wrong? About 18 months ago, Kim replied slowly. First it was small things, delayed shipments, cancelled contracts, equipment breakdowns, then bigger problems. Suppliers refusing to work with me, banks calling in loans early, spaceport authorities finding violations that never existed before. Look at this. So Young highlighted a section of the financial data. Vraxian Logistics Corporation has a subsidiary called Human Commerce Solutions. They offer consultation services to struggling human businesses. Kim's jaw clenched as he recognized the company name. They had approached him 6 months ago, offering to help restructure his debts in exchange for a controlling interest in his shipping routes. He had turned them down, not wanting to give up control of his family's business. Every human entrepreneur who refuses their help faces mysterious problems. So Young continued. Equipment failures, supply shortages, regulatory troubles. But the ones who accept Vraxian partnership suddenly find their problems disappearing. The holographic display showed hundreds of human companies across dozens of worlds, all following the same pattern. Independent businesses would struggle and fail, then be bought up by Vraxian-controlled corporations at bargain prices. The aliens weren't just making money. They were taking over human civilization one business at a time. My friend Lee used to run an electronics factory, Kim said quietly. Lost everything when his main supplier suddenly tripled their prices. He ended up selling to some alien consortium just to pay his workers' final wages. Vraxian industrial partners, So Young confirmed. Checking her data, they bought 47 human electronics companies last year alone. All of them had been mysteriously struggling before the sale. Kim felt a cold anger building in his chest. His father had started their cargo business with nothing, but determination and an old freight hauler. 3 generations of his family had built it into something to be proud of. And the whole time, aliens had been working behind the scenes to tear it down. The worst part is how they do it. So Young said, they make us think we're just bad at business, that we're naturally inferior to other species. Some humans have started believing we don't deserve economic independence. Why haven't you exposed this before now? Kim asked. My family tried. We had evidence, connections, resources, but the Vraxians moved first. So Young's voice hardened. They killed my parents and brothers, destroyed our corporate headquarters, and seized all our assets. I only escaped because I was visiting a research station when it happened. Kim looked round the abandoned warehouse, thinking about all the empty buildings in the industrial district. Human dreams and ambitions, reduced to rust and broken glass. We need to get this information to the Earth Embassy, So Young said. They have secure communication rays that can broadcast across human space simultaneously. Once people see the truth, they'll fight back, assuming we can survive long enough to reach them, Kim replied. Kim peered through the cracked warehouse window at the spaceport in the distance. Even from here, he could see the problem. Vraxian security ships circled the facility like hungry sharks, their searchlights cutting through the rain. Ground patrols of tall, silver-scaled warriors moved between the buildings, their energy weapons glowing in the darkness. They've locked down everything, Kim said. No human gets in or out without their permission. So Young stared at the data streams flowing across her neural implants. They're running identity scans on everyone, facial recognition, DNA sampling, even checking people's spending patterns for the last 6 months, looking for anyone connected to my family or sty. Kim rubbed his tired eyes. They had been hiding in the warehouse for 3 hours, watching Vraxian forces tighten their grip on the spaceport. Every escape route seemed blocked, every plan doomed to failure. But as he looked round the abandoned factory floor, an idea began to form. You know what the Vraxians don't understand about humans? Kim asked. What? We're really good at making something out of nothing. Kim activated his old communication unit, a battered device that had been his lifeline during the worst days of his cargo business. The Vraxians probably considered it primitive, junk, but it could still reach other humans across the colony. Lee Minho, are you there? Kim spoke into the transmitter. Static crackled for a moment. Then a familiar voice answered. Kim, where have you been? The whole industrial district is crawling with aliens. I need your help, old friend. And I need you to contact everyone else within an hour. Kim's communication unit was buzzing with responses. Park Jin-woo from the failed mining equipment company, Yoon Seo-jin from the collapsed electronics factory, Choi Hai-jin from the defunct shipping business. Dozens of human entrepreneurs who had lost everything to mysterious setbacks and impossible circumstances. Listen carefully, Kim told them. Everything that happened to our businesses wasn't random. We were sabotaged, all of us. He quickly explained about the Vraxian conspiracy, about So Young's evidence, and about the aliens currently surrounding the spaceport. The reaction was immediate and angry. These were people who had worked their entire lives to build something, only to watch it crumble for reasons they never understood. What do you need us to do? They asked over the comm. Remember how we used to share equipment when money was tight? Kim replied. How we helped each other out when the big corporations wouldn't work with us. It's time to do that again. So Young was transferring funds from her hidden accounts to the other humans, using encrypted channels that the Vraxians hadn't bothered to monitor. The aliens were watching for high-tech financial transfers, not the simple peer-to-peer systems that struggling human businesses had been using for decades. Jinwoo, I need you to power up that old mining drill at your warehouse, Kim instructed. The one the Vraxians said was obsolete. Seo-jin, can you get those broken communication rays working again? Across the industrial district, abandoned factories began to hum with activity. Equipment that had been dismissed as worthless junk by alien inspectors was being restored by humans who understood how to fix anything with spare parts and determination. The Vraxians had made a crucial mistake. They had studied human technology and found it inferior to their own advanced systems, but they had never bothered to understand human resourcefulness. They didn't know that a human mechanic could make a broken machine work with nothing but wire and stubbornness. The communication rays are online, Seo-jin reported. But they're not connected to the main networks. The Vraxians will never notice them. Perfect, Kim said. Now we need to create a distraction. The plan was beautifully simple. Well, the Vraxians focused all their attention on the spaceport. expecting Kim and So Young to try a desperate escape attempt. The real action would happen in the industrial district. The humans would use their obsolete equipment to broadcast So Young's evidence across human space, using communication channels that existed nowhere in Vraxian databases. Hygiene had managed to get her old shipping containers operational again. I can move equipment between warehouses without the aliens noticing, she said. They think all our stuff is just abandoned junk. Jinwoo, that mining drill of yours, Kim said. Can you use it to tunnel under the spaceport perimeter? Already started. Jinwoo replied with grim satisfaction. These aliens never bothered to scan underground. They're too busy watching the sky. The network of failed human businesses transformed into a coordinated resistance operation. Factory workers who had been laid off when their companies mysteriously collapsed returned to help. Miners who had lost their jobs to unexplained equipment failures brought their expertise. Truck drivers whose routes had been cancelled by alien-controlled logistics companies offered their vehicles. So Young watched in amazement as the humans worked together with an efficiency that surprised even her. Your people are incredible, she said. The Vraxians spend years planning their operations, but you're organizing this entire network in a few hours. When you've got nothing left to lose, you move fast, Kim replied. The abandoned factories filled with activity as humans prepared equipment that the Vraxians had written off as worthless. Old communication dishes were realigned to create a distributed broadcast network. Defunct manufacturing robots were reprogrammed to help with the technical work. Even broken transport vehicles were cannibalized for parts to keep the essential systems running. Kim, we're ready on this end, Lee reported. The moment you give us the signal, we can broadcast to every human colony in 3 sectors. Vraxian security is still focused on the spaceport, Hyjin added. They have no idea what we're doing back here. Kim looked at So Young, who was preparing to upload her evidence to their improvised network. Her neural implants were working at maximum capacity, organizing terabytes of data that would expose the alien conspiracy to the entire human population. Once we do this, there's no going back, Kim warned. The Vraxians will know we're responsible. Good, So Young replied. I want them to know exactly who brought them down. Now, Kim shouted into his communicator dot across the industrial district. Dozens of abandoned factories came alive at once. Communication rays that the Vraxians had dismissed as broken junk suddenly blazed with power. Manufacturing robots that had been collecting dust for months began coordinating data streams. Mining equipment that aliens considered obsolete started transmitting signals through underground cable networks. So Young's neural implants glowed brightly as she uploaded terabytes of evidence into the improvised broadcast network, financial records, communication intercepts, shipping manifests, and video testimony flowed through the human-built system at lightning speed. Broadcasting to Proxima Colony, Lee reported from his electronics factory. Signal is strong and clear. New Shanghai receiving, came another voice. They're asking for a confirmation on the financial data. Confirmed, So Young replied. Cross-reference. With local business failures in the last 5 years, the pattern will be obvious. At the spaceport, Vraxian security forces were growing increasingly agitated. Their commander, a tall reptilian creature with silver scales and cold yellow eyes, kept scanning the area with advanced sensors. But he was looking for escaping humans, not a coordinated broadcast operation happening right under his nose. Kim watched through binoculars as more Vraxian ships landed at the spaceport. They were bringing in heavy weapons and assault troops, preparing for what they expected to be a desperate human attempt to break through their blockade. They still don't understand, Kim said with satisfaction. They're fighting the wrong battle. The first response came from the Centauri system. "This is Governor Park of New Seoul." A voice crackled through the speakers. "We're seeing the evidence you transmitted. My God, this explains everything. The shipping delays, the supply shortages, the business failures. It was all deliberate." More colonies began responding. New Tokyo, New Bison, Terra Nova, Armstrong Station. Human settlements across 3 sectors were receiving the broadcast and spreading the word. The evidence was undeniable, and the anger was building. "Sir," one of Jinwoo's miners reported, "the tunnel under the spaceport is complete. We can get you both out whenever you're ready." But Kim was no longer thinking about escape. He was watching. His communication board light up with responses from human worlds he had never even heard of. The broadcast was spreading faster than anyone had expected, jumping from colony to colony through the network of human traders, miners, and entrepreneurs that connected civilization. So Young pulled up a galactic map on her neural display. Green dots were appearing across human space, worlds that had received the transmission and were beginning to act on it. "Look at this," she said excitedly. "New Jeju just cancelled all their contracts with Vraxian companies. The Asteroid Mining Consortium is forming a human-only trade partnership. Even the Earth Colonial Authority is launching an investigation at the spaceport." The Vraxian commander's communicator was buzzing with urgent messages. Kim could see the alien's body language changing from confident to confused to increasingly desperate. The reports flowing in from across the galaxy were not what he had expected. "Sir, we're getting reports from 17 worlds," the Vraxian's aide reported. "Human businesses are breaking contracts, refusing shipments, and forming independent trade networks. The local governments are backing them up." The Vraxian commander's yellow eyes narrowed dangerously. "Find the source of this broadcast. Destroy it immediately." But it was too late. The humans had built their network to be distributed and resilient, even if the Vraxians destroyed every transmitter in the industrial district. The evidence was already spreading through dozens of different channels. Human traders were copying the files to their personal drives. Colonial governors were forwarding the data to their defense forces. Independent news networks were broadcasting the story across the galaxy. "Kim, you need to see this," Hyjin called. From a shipping warehouse, "The Vraxian security ships are leaving the spaceport. They're heading for orbit fast." Kim looked up to see the alien interceptors climbing rapidly into the storm clouds. Their searchlights had gone dark, and they were moving with the urgency of creatures who suddenly realized they were in danger. "The game has changed," So Young said, monitoring the flood of responses on her neural implants. "They came here to hunt the fugitives. Now they're facing a galaxy-wide human uprising." The responses kept coming. Human colonies were not just rejecting Vraxian control. They were actively helping each other rebuild independent economies. The Proxima Mining Consortium was offering equipment to struggling human businesses. New Shanghai was providing low-interest loans to entrepreneurs who wanted to break free from alien partnerships. Armstrong Station was organizing a human-only shipping network that would bypass Vraxian logistics entirely. "This is incredible," Kim said, watching the real-time updates. "We're not just exposing their conspiracy. We're giving humans an alternative." By dawn, the transformation was complete. The Vraxian ships had fled the system entirely, and human-owned businesses across the industrial district were reopening their doors. Workers who had been unemployed for months were returning to factories that had been mysteriously shut down. Equipment that had been sabotaged was being repaired by human engineers who refused to accept alien explanations for the failures. So Young turned to Kim as they stood in the doorway of Lee's electronics factory. "Watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. I meant what I said earlier. Partner with me. Help me rebuild stellar terraforming industries. but this time as part of a truly independent human economy. Kim looked out at the industrial district, where smoke was rising from factory chimneys for the first time in months. Human workers were moving equipment, repairing machinery, and planning new projects. The abandoned warehouses were filling with activity as entrepreneurs who had given up hope began to believe in the future again. "You know what I think," Kim said. "We don't need to rebuild the old system. We can build something better." Across human space, the age of Raxian economic dominance was ending. Humans were remembering what had made them successful in the first place, not advanced technology or superior firepower, but the willingness to work together, to adapt to any situation, and to never give up no matter how impossible things seemed. The aliens had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed that humans would stay beaten down once they knocked them to the ground. They had never considered that humans might get back up, dust themselves off, and come back swinging. Now, they would learn what every successful species in the galaxy eventually discovered, that humanity's greatest strength was not in their technology or their weapons, but in their absolute refusal to accept defeat, the end.